Hello, I'm the Dark Master, and welcome back to the Kirby Right Back at Ya Retrospective. In today's video, we shall be covering episode 23, The Empty Nest Mess, or as it's known in the Japanese original, Lost Child Dino Chick. This episode was released on the 9th of March 2002 in Japan, while in the United States it was released on November 23rd, 2002, as the 21st episode. This was most likely due to changes in the release date of other episodes, not anything having to do with the episode itself. The episode opens to Didi's throne room, where we see a large mechanical contraption that resembles a gloved hand holding a giant syringe. Weird design, but alright. Here we see the first script change of the episode. In the Japanese original, King Dedede asks Escargoon if he was finished with the invention. In the English dub, this is changed to him joking around, saying that he thought Escargoon named the experiment Big Shot after himself. The change does make Dedede more egotistical and interesting. In either case, Escargoon reveals his invention, the Insta Monster mix, or as it's called in the Japanese original, the Grand Esker Demon Beast formula. This is a reference to a real-life Japanese brand of mostly harmless health drink called Grand Euchre Yellow Formula. Doing a bit of research, this is sort of one of those generic diet drinks. It's the kind of thing that Jeff Nambla Holiday would make a 40-minute pedantic, worthless video debunking as alleged pseudoscience, when really it's just harmless stuff. It doesn't really appear to be pseudoscience at all, in fact. Dedede asks if it really works, and Escargoon explains, just injecting the serum into any creature, and it turned into a mighty demon beast. Dedede then demands a demonstration, and Escargoon obliges by pulling out a measly little caterpillar he got from his garden. It's adorable, just look at it. Interestingly, in the Japanese original, it is referred to as a hornworm. That is a reference to a real-life type of butterfly of the genus Manduca, which plague American tobacco and tomato farmers. Considering that this reference in Japan really doesn't make any sense, since that genus of moth isn't really from there in any prominent manner, it's kind of odd that it was omitted from the English dub. Escargoon injects the caterpillar with a little bit of the serum. Dedede looks away due to his dislike of needles, which is good character, and there is a brief pause before the caterpillar transforms into a massive monster, growing yellow spines, a pair of silver mandibles, and blue demonic eyes of death. This is the quote-unquote monster of the week, referred to as Inamushi Maju, or caterpillar monster. Yeah, it's kind of utilitarian in name, Pretty forgettable, I'm not gonna lie. Though considering its minor role in the episode, I guess that makes sense. The giant caterpillar bellows while smothering the two ne'er-do-wells. It picks up Escargoon in its mandibles and swings him around. Didi demands him to get the caterpillar off him. While Escargoon is shaken around helplessly, he says he might have used a bit too much. Which, definitely, yeah. But look on the bright side. They know it works, as Escargoon says. Didi, still crushed, laughs, saying now he doesn't need to buy monsters from Enemy, as he can make all the ones he wants. Now, I could comment on that now, but I'll save it for later in the video. Let's just say that's not exactly what happens. Also, I hope you weren't expecting closure about that caterpillar monster. It just sort of disappears and is never seen again. It is confirmed that it is one of the few monsters that Kirby didn't fight. I guess Dedede and his Waddle Dees all kind of chased it away into the forest. I mean, it's not the first time nor the last time that the king let loose some sort of invasive species. Anyway, we then have the intro. After the intro, we see a camera pan of a forest skyline. In the English dub, this was slightly slowed down. We see a cappy lumberjack chopping wood when a gust of wind blasts him away to his death. Sheep suffer a similar fate as a gust of wind blows through Cappy Town, breaking windows as an enraged Dynablade flies by. Dynablade returns to her nest as we see a Cappy mother and daughter peek out of their door as the other Cappies emerge from hiding. Chief Pilkums wonders what is wrong with Dynablade, with Kawasaki saying that its ruckus caused this souffle to sink. Yeah, sure, blame the bird and not your terrible cooking skills. The mayor comments on how Dynablade has quite the flighty disposition, while Professor Curio walks up and says Dynablade has one child a century, and via the reuse of animation, we see the events of the last time the bird was angry. Curio says he hopes nothing is wrong with the chick. The mayor asks what could be wrong, as the professor says he doesn't know. We then see Kirby and the wretched bird to Corey, and right off the bat, we see him accuse Kirby of eating the chick, despite knowing full well Kirby was innocent in that previous episode, and that he had been with him all day today. You witch-hunting terrible bird. We then cut to the forest, where we see Kirby running to Dynablade's nest. Corey, meanwhile, tries to convince Kirby to leave well enough alone, but eventually gives in and follows after the pink puffball. In the Japanese original, we see the camera slowly panning upwards from the forest skyline to the top of the nest. In the English dub, the shot fades in halfway up. This also shortened up the camera pan in the English dub. Overall, it's fine. Both versions are perfectly watchable. We see Kirby and Takori climbing a mountain path. When they come to a dead end caused by a rock slide, Takori tells Kirby to stay where they are and he will check on the nest. Shocked, he sees that the nest is empty, all the while complaining his wings are tired. What a loathsome person, how lazy you are. He looks around as we cut back to Kirby. He hears the pained cries of Dynablade's chick. As we see the baby in a bird cage, Dedede tells Escargoon to hurry before Dynablade returns and gets them. In the Japanese original, Escargoon claims that the chick is acting up and that's why he's having a hard time with the device. In the English dub, he claims that the device itself is not working properly, blaming DDD for buying it. Which, technically speaking, didn't he install it into the mech? Anyway. In either case, they drop the cage, which plummets to the bottom of the gorge, and the king orders Escargoon to drive down after the bird. We then cut to see the cage was opened by the fall, and the chick fell out, unharmed. Kirby walks in and greets the chick. The Dinah chick has a flashback to Kirby feeding it bananas, and remembers Kirby. I like the interaction as it kind of builds on previous relationships, but it also has reused animation, which is just terrible. But I do agree that in this case, I don't mind it as much because it's just adorable. And so each of the two hug, at least until the horrible bird Tokori enters the scene looking for Kirby. He notices the pair and then goes over to them. He looks at the chick, saying they gotta return to their mom's nest. His crass attitude scares the poor baby, who then throws Kirby on top of Tokori and runs away. The two follow after the baby bird. We then cut to DDD, who has driven down to where the cage was, and all they see is the empty cage, from which the king deduces that the chick escaped, and he blames Escargoon, who bemoans that it is always his fault. The king says if he hadn't dropped the baby bird initially, this whole incident wouldn't have occurred. We then have a flashback with new footage, this time of the last night, where we see Dee Dee and Escargoon using an extremely long ladder to climb up to the nest. They have put the baby in the cage and were successful at being quiet enough and not waking the mom. We then see the pair carefully walking down the ladder. In the Japanese original, we see Escargoon's thoughts detesting the king's pushing on the cage. These were sadly removed in the English dub, which is kind of a shame because then it just seems like they dropped the cage for no reason. Luckily, the duo are completely incompetent, as the king misses a step, causing the pair to drop the cage into the ravine that they had been trying to get the bird from earlier in the episode. This fall awakens the baby and her mom. This forces the king and Escargoon to book it for the time being. After the flashback, the king says one more slip up and he'll fire Escargoon, which the snail and I both know are an empty threat. They ride off and we see Dynachick running up the very same hill from the very first episode of the anime, and the baby is amazed by what he sees. This brief pause allows Kirby and Tokori to catch up and catch their breaths with the chick. In the Japanese original, there is a close-up of Tokori where he says the chick is, "You're an awfully quick feather," which is kind of odd. That scene and the line was cut out from the English dub, and honestly good. Less Tokori is always better. Tokori says the road trip is over and asks the Dinah chick to go home. The baby ignores him and runs towards the Cappy Town, while the two run after him. In the Japanese original, the camera pans downwards upon a bridge, whereas in the English dub, the camera pan was cut and it just shows the bridge over the river. Kinda lame, but forgivable. We see the mayor and his wife are riding their old-fashioned car. Dinah Chick runs into the road, causing the mayor to swerve into a tree and become pure rubble. We then cut to Mabel and Buttercup talking when they are shocked to see Dinah Chick drinking from a fountain. In the Japanese original, they are unaware of what it is and guess it is a walking roast chicken. In the English dub, these lines were changed to them knowing it was Dynachick and how surprised they are to see it gargling. Both lines are fine, but I do like the English one a little more. Dynachick runs forwards as Tiff and Tuff see him, and so enter the episode as they start running after the bird after they see Kirby and Takori chasing after the bird. Tiff demands an explanation, while Takori dismisses her as he's too focused on catching the baby bird. How rude of him. We then cut to the town, where we see the chick causing all sorts of issues. These include pushing Tuggle, the store owner, while he's carrying a lot of boxes, eating out of some Cappy's soup before being chased away by an angry Kawasaki, and scaring a Cappy mother and her daughter who were shopping for plushies, much to the toy store owner Gengu's dismay. We then see the chick running through the town, being pursued by an ever larger mob. We cut to Curio putting together an ancient vase. As one can predict, the chick breaks the vase. However, the rambunctious child finally calms down when it sees a shed feather off its mother, in what is a nice bit of continuity from the previous episode, as last time we did in fact see a shed feather, and we saw that Professor Curio, let's just say, appropriated it for his museum. The group are shocked, but Curio explains that the feather is the chick's mother, as Tiff says it must miss her, and Tuff says they must give it back to its nest. However, then we hear Didi's voice demanding they give the chick back to them. Tiff and her brother call them out, saying that they don't really care at all about the environment or the chick. Didi counters this by saying Dinah Blade will be ticked off when she learns that they have the chick, which, while correct, Tiff points out that it's safer with them than with the greedy king. The king drives off with Escargoon saying, "They'll be sorry for this." Tiff then tells the excited chick that they are taking it home. The chick is excited as Kirby, and the others run off as Chief Bookums and the mayor comment on how amazing it is that something so small and weak can grow to be something so big. Curio explains it takes years, and the Japanese version going as far as say 100 years, for the baby to grow up, and that the parent guards it well during that time. As we cut to Dynablade soaring in the air, looking for its baby. After a commercial break, we see the Kin and Escargoon are hiding in the bushes, waiting to ambush the kids. Eventually, the kids and the chick do arrive, and an excited Dinah chick goes over to the stream for a nice drink, while Tuff, exhausted from all that running, suggests they rest for a moment. However, both of these things are cut short as a net captures Dynachick as Dedede and Escargoon capture the bird. Tuff and the others demand that they free the bird, while Escargoon childishly mocks them, telling them to come get it if they so want it. However, this cocky attitude costs them dearly, as the chicken manages to jump out of the net, falling into the arguably more dangerous rapids. Kirby and the others run after the chick, as do the king and the Escargoon. The baby's wailing even captures the attention of its mother. In the Japanese original, there are some additional scenes. These include a few seconds of Dedede watching intently at the chick, and an additional wide shot is taken of the two parties running after the chick. In the English dub, these two scenes were removed. I kind of miss them, to be honest, but though with their absence, they do make the scene go by more faster and seem more intense, but I don't know, there's something missing with them gone. Unluckily for our heroes, the left side of the stream comes to an end, while Dee Dee Neskragoon's side goes on further. Tiff then calls the Warp Star, and she orders Takori to follow the chick. Kaboo answers the prayer and releases the Warp Star as Kirby jumps onto it to go after the Dyna chick. The Dyna chick has managed to grab hold of a log, while Takori, the terrible bird, assures him that Kirby is on his way. And so Kirby is indeed. Unfortunately, there is some misunderstanding, and Dynablade starts diving after / attacking Kirby. This, of course, prevents Kirby from saving the chick and distracts Dynablade. This chase leads to a canyon as the two CGI models chase after each other. Dynablade is smashing through rocks to get to Kirby. Kirby goes to somewhere narrow and briefly escapes the bird, but it doesn't last as we cut back to the river, which after the rapids seems to have calmed down a bit. The cute Dyna baby and the wretched bird Takori are seen having survived the falls. Unluckily for them, Dee Dee and Neskragoon are waiting, and at the prime opportunity, Dee Dee snatched the chick in a nest, while the bird Takori is lazy and does nothing. And learning from past mistakes, the king swiftly puts the troublesome chick into a container on the tank as they drive off to the castle, as Takori flies off. He goes to tell Tiff and Tuff, who are slowly making their way over rugged terrain, and after telling them about the situation, Tiff tells the Yellow Devil to go after and tell Kirby about the situation. We then cut again to Kirby being chased by Dynablade. She's very determined and bites the Warp Star and begins shaking it vigorously as Kirby barely holds on for dear life. Eventually, Kirby is sent flying as he is falling to his death. The foul Takori informs him about Dee Dee's action, yet does nothing to save Kirby from falling to his death.
What an asshole!
Luckily, Kirby catches his Warp Star, and using the nearly worthless knowledge given to him by Takori, he flies off as Dynablade follows close behind. We cut to Castle Dee Dee, where we see the Dyna chick in a cage as Dee Dee and Eskragoon evilly gloat at their success. Eskragoon says this serum will turn the baby into a monster. It sure does sound useful. Surely we'll see it again in the series. He activates the injector, which begins to slowly approach the baby, and I mean slowly. After a momentary break, we cut to Kirby, who is still fleeing from Dynablade. He slowly leads the bird to the castle, eventually entering it as the angry mother chases after him, causing millions of dollars in property damage, breaking dozens of structural columns. We then see Meta Knight in what has to be one of the most slapdash last-minute what the fuck inclusions in the anime. Seriously, Folo and Fala are carrying him, flying far faster than they ever have done or ever will do in the anime. He informs Kirby to go into the throne room, somehow having the knowledge about the whole affair. As the chick is about to be injected, 4Kids seem to add one last commercial break. Not that that is an issue thanks to the re-uploads on digital platforms, but still, this is the final scene change of the episode, so it's worth mentioning. Dee Dee laughs evilly, but Kirby bursts through the door, followed by the angry Mother Dynablade. Where are the Waddle Dee guards, you may ask? Good question. Anyway, the two ne'er-do-wells quiver in fear as Takori explains the whole situation to Dynablade, who then proceeds to stomp on the parrot before they can escape, and then she proceeds to slap the machine aside, destroying it, and all the monster mix is destroyed. She breaks her child free as Tuff and Tiff arrive in time to see mother and child reunited. It's an amazingly adorable event, even if the CGI is dated, as Tiff says to Kirby he's the hero again and that Dynablade is thankful, though I don't think Kirby was ever the villain when it comes to Dynablade, but whatever. The group wave goodbye as Dynablade and her child leave to return to their nest. She carries the dismayed King Dedede and Escargoon away. He demands her to let them go, to which she obliges. Remember, always be careful with your words towards people who are flying. And they ironically fall into the very same rapids that the chick fell in earlier in the episode, as Dynablade and her baby return to their home nest. We cut back to the group, still staring off into the horizon, and the episode ends with the last script change of the episode. In the Japanese original, Takori, after perching on Kirby's head, states he must be a good person if he associates with Kirby to the very end. Now this is kind of illogical. It's some sort of good by association fallacy, implying you are a good person even if you are despicable merely because you associate with Kirby. You're still terrible, Takori. Everyone knows that. In the English dub, this is changed to him saying, Kirby is like a fly in a marmalade factory, always getting stuck in other people's jams. On one hand, this does give the southern character more depth, but it's forgettable, much like Takori as a whole. And so the episode ends with a Kirby and the audience confused by the yellow bird's canards. Now let's go over the positives, negatives, and my final thoughts on the episode. In terms of positives, I think the episode as a whole is a great continuation of the previous episode involving Dynablade. It's not just, hey, here's Dynablade, and hey, here is her baby. It's like, there's actually a level of thought put into how they continue. Also, the way that Dynablade was utilized in this episode, I thought was really good, as was the baby. And some people have complained that Wing Kirby wasn't here, but honestly, I actually kind of liked it. It meant that Kirby had to use the Warp Star in an interesting and unique manner. I also thought that Dedede and Escargoon did well in this episode. In fact, the Insta Monster mix as a concept is really interesting and makes sense considering Dedede is a cheapskate and probably would want to find a way around enemies' price gouging. Sadly, here's where the genuine negatives start, though. You see, while the idea of an Insta Monster mix is actually pretty good and does make sense, what if I told you that we never see this substance again?
What?
I know, right? The only time this substance is seen again is in episode 87. Now, I think I've mentioned that episode before, interestingly enough. Waste management. And then it wasn't an intentional usage by the king, but I think I'll save a more in-depth description of that episode to when we eventually get to it. But the fact that this substance, even though it has such amazing potential, but never used again is terrible wasted potential. What happened? Did the fall give Escargoon and the king brain injury? Did they forget? Is it really expensive to make? Did the writers forget? Who knows? In any case, it's horribly wasted potential, and we'll see that again in the series, trust me. Also, I thought that due to that lack of follow-up with the Insta Monster mix, in some ways it also makes the whole intro scene redundant, which is not helped by, let's be honest, the extremely forgettable monster. I mean, really, why even have that intro? Aside from the episode in and of itself, which I admit it does good, but it does become a little more redundant considering that it's never used again and the monster outright disappears. Meta Knight's inclusion really kind of just feels slapped in at the last moment. I mean, he literally doesn't even move. He's being carried by, like, Folo and Falala. With all this said, there are two pieces of criticism that I think need to be addressed due to their illegitimacy. First, there's some moral panicking due to Takori's usage of the acronym BS, which, if you don't know, stands for bullshit. Honestly, it's of so little notice, I didn't even put it in the plot recap. Like, seriously, who cares? Takori is a terrible character that no kid actually liked or emulated. As for the second critique, that's a bit more touchy and hard to explain. Some people, notably losers like Jeff Holiday, have claimed that this episode is anti-vax propaganda. Number one, this was made long before the popularity of the anti-vax movement really returned. Secondly, the Monster Maker formula is kind of more like steroids. I mean, seriously, what kind of vaccine turns people into monsters? No, it doesn't cause autism. Autism people are not monsters, and vaccines don't cause autism, so don't even make that argument, you jackass. Thirdly, just because something has needles doesn't mean the episode involves vaccines. And fourthly, come on, man, are you really going to complain about propaganda when you've defended the deaths caused by Antifa and have a literal Nambla tattoo? Maybe you ought to talk about propaganda when you're unbiased, Jeff. But enough of that political drivel. In conclusion, this episode is good, but it has some flaws. I still recommend watching it, as it's a silver episode, I would say. It's not gold, it's not bronze. Sure, you can skip it, but do you really want to skip it? I'm the Dark Master, and join me next time on the Kirby Right Back at Ya Retrospective. Next time, we're getting ninja up here. Have a nice day.